The Reddit post went up on a Thursday evening. It was written by a professional translator who had spent 5 years building Spanish lessons for one of the most downloaded apps in the world. His name was not in the post. His contract had ended. And now he was explaining publicly what his employer had told him privately. The reason wasn't performance, wasn't budget cuts, wasn't anything he had done. It was AI. The reason Duolingo gave, he wrote, is that AI can come up with content and translations, alternative translations, and pretty much anything else translators did. Within 48 hours, the post had been shared tens of thousands of times. Users who had paid for Duolingo Plus for years announced they were canceling. Competing apps saw a download spike. The hashtag trended. And Duolingo's CEO went on LinkedIn to explain himself. He said he hadn't given enough context. He did not change the policy. Duolingo was founded in 2011 by Luis von Ahn, a computer science professor at Carnegie Mellon University and the inventor of CAPTCHA, the test you take to prove you're a human. There is a certain irony in this. The man who built a system to distinguish humans from machines then built a business that eventually decided it didn't need as many humans. The language learning app grew into one of the world's most downloaded and used educational tools. By 2023, Duolingo had 83 million monthly active users and revenue projected at $528 million. Its stock had tripled in a single year. The owl mascot, Duo, had become a cultural phenomenon. Behind the product were hundreds of contractors, linguists, translators, language specialists, who built and maintained the courses. These were not entry-level workers. Some of them were professional translators with advanced degrees and years of experience. They brought knowledge of idiomatic expression, cultural nuance, regional variation, the kind of thing that makes a language course feel like it was made by someone who actually speaks the language. Duolingo had begun testing AI-generated content internally at the start of 2023. It didn't tell the contractors. Then it told them the tests were promising. Then, in August 2023, it cut the contractors working on its smaller language programs. In December 2023, it cut more, the translators working on major programs, including Spanish and Japanese. The Reddit post came from someone who had been on one of those teams. Within 48 hours, it had been shared tens of thousands of times. Duolingo's move was not unusual. It was unusually visible. The company had spent the previous year building Duolingo Max, a premium subscription tier that used GPT-4 to allow users to have AI-powered conversations in their target language and receive AI-generated feedback on mistakes. The pitch was that AI could offer personalized practice that was impossible at scale with human teachers. It was, in many ways, an impressive product. But Duolingo Max was an addition to the platform. The contractor cuts were a subtraction. The translators who were let go weren't teaching users. They were building the foundational content, the sentence banks, the translation exercises, the error-checking logic, that every course relied on. When Duolingo replaced them with AI, it was betting that GPT-4 could produce that content at the same quality for a fraction of the cost. A spokesperson told CNN, "We are not swapping the expertise of human experts for AI. AI is a tool we are using to increase productivity and efficiency." Former contractors told reporters a different story. One said her team of 4 had been reduced to 2 people whose job was now to review AI-generated translations for acceptability, not to create anything, but to approve or reject what the machine had produced. Another contractor said she had not been offered an alternative role before being let go. The contractor workforce at Duolingo had always been vulnerable in ways that full-time employees weren't. No benefits. No job security. No voice. When the company needed to make a cost cut, contractors were the first category that offered minimal legal or structural resistance. The public reaction was swift and, for Duolingo, unexpectedly damaging. Users launched boycott campaigns on social media. Competing apps, Babbel, Pimsleur, Rosetta Stone, saw downloads spike. On Reddit, forums dedicated to language learning filled with threads explaining why the AI shift undermined the product's value. The argument was consistent. Duolingo had been trusted because human experts had verified its content. The company was now asking users to trust content that no human expert had created. Language learning is a product where trust matters in a specific way. When you're learning to speak Spanish, you're relying on the course to teach you how actual Spanish speakers talk, not a statistically probable approximation of Spanish. A translation that is technically correct but sounds unnatural to a native speaker will teach you to sound unnatural. The error isn't visible until you use what you learned, in the real world, with a real person who speaks the language natively. That's the hidden cost of AI-generated language content. It can be grammatically right while being experientially wrong. And the people who would have caught that, the translators with years of field experience, the linguists who spoke the language at home, were the ones who had been let go. Users who had been with Duolingo for years described noticing the change in content quality before they heard about the cuts. Exercises that felt slightly off. Translations that were technically correct but used in contexts that no native speaker would. The kind of thing that a human reviewer would have flagged, and that an AI reviewing AI output would not. In April 2025, von Ahn sent another memo. This one formalized the direction. Duolingo would be AI first. It would gradually stop using contractors to do work that AI can handle. New teams would only be allowed to hire if they could prove they couldn't automate the work instead. The backlash was larger this time. Not from inside the company, von Ahn said his employees were not particularly concerned, but from users. The memo was leaked. It spread across Twitter, Reddit, and language learning forums. Subscribers who had renewed their Plus subscriptions for years canceled them. Teachers who had used Duolingo as a classroom supplement announced they were switching to alternatives. Educators argued that an AI-first language app was fundamentally at odds with what language learning actually requires: exposure to authentic human communication, in context, with cultural depth. Von Ahn's LinkedIn post, meant to clarify and reassure, backfired. He said the AI-first policy did not mean firing full-time employees. He said he had not given enough context. He said Duolingo's human linguists would continue to play a critical role. But the people who had been let go were contractors. The policy had always been, contractors first. And the public, by then, understood exactly what AI can handle this work meant for the humans who had been handling it. On the company's second quarter 2025 earnings call, von Ahn acknowledged what had happened. Daily active user growth, which had been 60% year-over-year for 2 consecutive years, came in at 40%. Below expectations. The reason we came towards the lower end, he said, was because I said some stuff about AI. He paused. I didn't give enough context. The revenue was still strong. The valuation was still high. 40% user growth was not a catastrophe. But it was a visible crack in a narrative that Duolingo had built carefully for years, that its product worked because smart, dedicated humans had made it work. Von Ahn clarified, on LinkedIn and in interviews, that he did not intend to fire full-time employees. The policy was specifically about contractors. The translators who were let go had no avenue to appeal this. Their contracts had ended. Duolingo had simply chosen not to renew them. There were no wrongful dismissal claims available. There was no union. There was no legal protection specific to AI-driven non-renewal. What remained was the question of quality. The company had bet that AI-generated content, reviewed by a smaller human team, would be as good as human-created content reviewed by a larger human team. By 2025, TechCrunch reported another round of cuts, this time affecting writers, not translators, also replaced by AI. The pattern was repeating. There's a second thing the Duolingo case illuminates that rarely gets discussed: the specific economics of contractor displacement versus employee displacement. When a company fires full-time employees, there are costs. Severance packages. Unemployment claims. Potential wrongful termination suits. News coverage. Internal morale effects. HR processes. The frictions of employment law create a certain resistance to large-scale cuts, not enough to prevent them, but enough to slow them and make the company think carefully about the decision. When a company stops renewing contractor agreements, none of those frictions apply. The contractor's agreement ends. It is not renewed. There is no termination. There is no severance. There is no unemployment claim. Contractors in most jurisdictions don't qualify for unemployment insurance. There is no news coverage, because there is no announcement. The work simply stops coming. This is why AI displacement is hitting contractors before employees. Not because contractors' work is more automatable, but because displacing contractors is economically frictionless. Duolingo's translators weren't replaced because AI was clearly better. They were replaced because replacing them cost nothing beyond the decision itself. That is a structural fact about the labor market that no amount of AI-first memo clarity will address. Users who complained about content quality were often dismissed as anecdotal. The company's growth metrics were strong, 40% year over year is not a failure by most standards. But it was slower. And the people who left, the ones who cited the AI shift as the reason, were not coming back. The contractors whose livelihoods disappeared are not tracked in any company metric. They show up, briefly, in Reddit posts and news articles. Then they disappear from the story. There's a particular irony in who was displaced. Duolingo's translators and linguists were people who had made themselves useful by understanding something deeply human: how language actually works, how people learn it, how context shapes meaning, how a sentence can be technically correct and culturally wrong at the same time. These are exactly the skills that AI cannot fully replicate, not because the technology isn't powerful, but because language is not a database to be retrieved. It is a living system, shaped by the people who use it, and understanding it requires being one of those people. Duolingo replaced the people who understood this with a tool that approximates it. Whether that approximation is good enough, that question is being answered in real time, in the experiences of millions of learners who are trying to become fluent in a language a machine taught them. Duolingo is worth approximately $16.8 billion. Its product teaches people language. Its founder invented a system to tell humans and machines apart. The people who built the courses that made Duolingo trusted are, mostly, not there anymore. What replaced them is faster. It is cheaper. It produces more content than any human team could. And somewhere, right now, a user is completing a Spanish lesson built by an AI that has never been to Spain, never heard someone from Buenos Aires speak differently from someone in Madrid, never had to think about whether a sentence sounds like something a person would actually say. The streak continues. The owl approves. Somewhere, a student who learned Spanish from an AI is visiting Spain for the first time, and using phrases that sound technically correct and somehow off phrases that a human translator would have known to flag, and that the machine approved because the grammar was right. The owl doesn't know the difference. Do you? If you think more people need to hear this story, share it. And subscribe, because this isn't the last time AI changes someone's life.